The year was 2358, and humanity had finally made contact with alien species. But rather than the peaceful exchange of knowledge and diplomacy that had been anticipated, the galaxy's first steps into intergalactic relations had been met with distrust, manipulation, and hostility. Earth had become a speck in a vast universe where politics and power dominated, and Earth's fragile place in the galactic order was both precarious and uncertain. In the center of the Galactic Assembly, a coalition of hundreds of alien species, a council of the most powerful and influential entities in the known universe, there was a growing tension. Humanity was a curious race, a species too young, too volatile, too filled with contradictions to be taken seriously. Among the most vocal critics of Earth's place in the galaxy was a species known as the Valorians, massive reptilian beings with scales harder than diamond and minds colder than ice. They held power, and with it, disdain for the upstart humans. Earth had sent their best diplomats, scientists, and military officers, but the Valorians scoffed at their attempts. The humans were too emotional, their societies too fragmented. The Valorians considered themselves the epitome of order and reason. They looked down on humanity, thinking of them as little more than a passing nuisance, a species that would inevitably fall in line with the galactic powers or be wiped out. But they underestimated Earth's resolve. In the heart of this galactic theater stood a figure who would alter the course of human history and perhaps galactic history itself, a young girl named Serena D'Angelo. Serena had not come to the Galactic Assembly as a diplomat or a soldier. She had come as a teenager, barely 17, a girl from the streets of a decimated Earth city, far from any political machine or governmental office. Her family had perished in one of the many wars fought on Earth in the years before contact. She had been raised in a world of conflict and had survived by mastering skills that no one would expect from someone her age, skills that would soon make her famous across the stars. Her weapon of choice? A sword. She was an enigma unlike any other human representative in the assembly, and no one knew what to make of her. Chapter 2: The First Challenge. Serena's arrival on the Valorian homeworld, a towering planet of steel and lava rivers, had been met with silence. The Galactic Assembly was to be held on their home turf, and they were not pleased to see the humans encroaching on their space. Serena, wearing her plain Earthian clothing and carrying nothing more than an old ceremonial sword passed down through her family, had stood in stark contrast to the polished, high-ranking representatives of other species. She had no entourage, no high-tech gadgets, and certainly no diplomatic training. Just her quiet confidence, and her sword, a relic from a lost world. When the moment came to speak, Serena did not bow, nor did she offer any greetings. She simply raised her voice and spoke in a tone that carried across the grand chamber of the Galactic Assembly. Her eyes, unyielding, met those of the Valorian representatives. "The time for politeness and waiting has passed," she said, her voice cutting through the air. "You all want to see humanity bend to your will. You want us to be nothing more than your pawns in your galactic games. But I am not here to beg for peace or grovel at your feet. I'm here because Earth deserves respect, and if you can't give that freely, I'll make you give it." A ripple of surprise passed through the chamber. Some of the older representatives of the assembly, accustomed to the posturing and diplomacy of the galaxy's elite, laughed at the audacity of the human girl. But there was something in Serena's gaze, something that made them uneasy. Before anyone could respond, a Valorian ambassador stood up, his great lizard-like form towering over Serena. His voice rumbled like thunder as he spoke in the ancient tongue of the Valorians. "You have no place here, human. You think you can command respect? You are no more than a child." Serena's face remained stoic. Without a word, she unsheathed her sword, a blade forged long ago by the first ancestors of humanity, a relic that had seen countless battles and held the weight of her family's legacy. The room fell into stunned silence as Serena took a single step forward. She was not looking for a fight, at least, not one of her choosing, but she was prepared to give one if that was the only way to prove her point. "I don't need a crown or a seat of power," she said, her voice quiet but firm. "I have this, and I know how to use it." This is all the respect I need, and all the respect you will have." With a sudden motion, Serena lunged forward, the blade slicing through the air in a fluid motion. The Valorian ambassador, too slow to react, stumbled back as the sword barely missed his scales. The assembly gasped. The sheer audacity of her action sent shockwaves through the chamber. The Valorian ambassador hissed, his mouth open, but he did not draw a weapon. He merely stared down at Serena with a glimmer of both surprise and something else, something he couldn't quite place. Serena's blade remained poised, her eyes unwavering. "The next time you speak to me with disdain," she said, "I'll take more than just your pride." Chapter 3: The Trial of Respect. The Galactic Assembly erupted into chaos. The representatives of countless alien races, who had once ruled over humanity with condescension, were now witnessing something they hadn't anticipated: a human girl, untrained in diplomacy, challenging the very foundation of their galactic power. The Valorians were not accustomed to being confronted in such a direct manner, especially by a species they had thought inferior. But Serena's boldness had not gone unnoticed. While some of the assembly demanded immediate punishment for her insolence, others saw something else: a spark, a challenge they could not ignore. Within hours, Serena found herself at the center of an intense debate. The Valorian representative, while humiliated, did not call for her execution. Instead, they demanded a trial. A trial to prove her worth, a challenge of combat, not in the arena of words, but in the field of battle. To the Valorians, this was the ultimate test of honor and strength. Serena had no intention of backing down. She agreed, knowing full well that this was not just about her personal survival, it was about humanity's place in the galaxy. If she could win, she would prove that Earth was worthy of respect. If she failed, humanity would forever be relegated to the backseat in galactic affairs. The trial would take place in a grand arena on Valorian soil, where combatants from across the galaxy came to fight for glory, power, and honor. But this time, there would be no alien technology to rely on, no armies of automatons to fight on her behalf. Just her and her sword. The challenge was set. The fate of humanity would rest on Serena D'Angelo's shoulders, and she had no intention of letting her people down. Chapter 4: The Arena of Power. The Valorians believed in strength of body, mind, and spirit. Their arena was a vast coliseum built into the planet's surface, a place where only the most worthy combatants were allowed to fight. Serena stood alone in the center of the arena, her sword in hand, facing down her first opponent, an enormous, hulking creature of unknown origin. It towered over her, its muscles rippling like a tempest. Its skin was covered in armored plates, and its eyes burned with an intense, predatory gleam. The crowd roared with excitement, alien voices filling the air as the creature lunged toward her, claws bared and teeth glinting. Serena's heart pounded in her chest, but her hands remained steady on the sword's hilt. She had lived her life in conflict, fighting not just for survival, but for something more. This battle was not for herself, but for all of humanity. As the creature closed in, Serena did not hesitate. With a flick of her wrist, she spun around, narrowly avoiding its massive claws. She slashed at its exposed flank, her blade cutting through its thick hide like butter. The creature howled in pain, but it was not finished. It swung around in an attempt to crush her with its massive fist. Serena's training, honed over years of survival, kicked in. She dove beneath the fist, rolling to the side, and then sprang to her feet. Her blade flashed again, finding the creature's heart with a precise strike. The beast collapsed in a heap, and the crowd fell silent. Serena stood over her fallen opponent, breathing heavily but unfazed. She had won, but this was only the beginning. Chapter 5: Teaching Respect. Over the next few weeks, Serena fought in the arena again and again, facing opponents from all corners of the galaxy. Each battle was more brutal than the last, but she emerged victorious every time, her sword cutting through alien flesh with unmatched precision. She had come to understand the language of respect, the language of combat. And slowly, the galaxy began to take notice. Her final challenge was not a physical fight, but a mental one. The Valorian representative, who had once dismissed her as a mere child, now stood before her in the arena. "Do you truly believe you can teach us respect?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous. Serena's gaze was unwavering. She stepped forward, her sword still at her side. "No," she said quietly. "But I will show you why you should give it." The battle, in its own way, had just begun. Chapter 6: The Trials of Honor. The days following Serena's victory in the arena were filled with a strange mix of reverence and disbelief. Across the galaxy, rumors spread like wildfire about the Earth Girl who had bested alien warriors without relying on advanced technology or weapons of mass destruction. In the arenas, legends were already being spun, and in hushed chambers of power, political and military leaders began to question their assumptions about humanity. Serena, however, remained focused. The battle against the Valorians was not the end, it was only the beginning. She had not come to the Galactic Assemblies simply to survive. She had come to make Earth a force to be reckoned with, to earn the respect of the galaxy, not through submission, but through strength and honor. Her next challenge was one of diplomacy. The Valorians had lost face after her victories, and now they sought a way to either trap her into a series of political agreements or to break her spirit. They had underestimated her before, and this time they would not make the same mistake. The Council called for another gathering. The Galactic Assembly had already seen Earth's might in the arena, but now it was time to face the true test. Would Serena be able to maintain her standing through negotiation, through the often brutal and manipulative politics of the galaxy's power players? Chapter 7: The Diplomacy of Steel. Serena was ushered into the council chamber with the same quiet strength she had exhibited in the arena. The high, vaulted ceilings of the Galactic Assembly's meeting hall were adorned with tapestries and holographic projections of distant galaxies. The atmosphere felt heavy with expectations. The Valorians sat at the front of the chamber, their leader Commander Ralkoth glaring down at Serena from his podium. His massive form, bathed in the artificial light, appeared even more imposing now. To his left, several other species from across the galaxy shifted uncomfortably in their seats, awaiting the drama to unfold. Serena could sense the rising tension. Her opponents, the Valorians, had a history of using subtle manipulation and mind games to win their battles in the Council, but Serena had no interest in playing by their rules. She had learned that brute strength was not enough. The galaxy had far more insidious forces at work. "I'll be clear," Commander Ralkoth growled, his voice like the rumble of thunder. "Your victory in the arena may have earned you some temporary respect, human, but it has also made you a symbol we cannot allow to stand unchallenged. You and your people are beneath us. You will fall in line or face destruction." Serena did not flinch, her eyes meeting his without hesitation. She stepped forward, her movements deliberate and steady. "I've already shown you that my people will not fall easily. You may control armies, you may control planets, but you cannot control the spirit of humanity." The murmurs in the room intensified, but Serena was unfazed. She had learned that the greatest weapon a person could wield in a room like this wasn't steel, it was conviction. She raised her voice, addressing not just the Valorians, but the entire assembly. "Let me be clear," she continued, her voice calm but filled with unyielding resolve. "Earth will not be dictated to. We are not your playthings, your pawns in some galactic game. We came to this assembly not to bow, but to stand. If you want our cooperation, you will earn it. We will not bend to your will, but we will work with you, side by side, as equals." For a moment, the chamber fell into stunned silence. The Valorians looked uneasy, their plans disrupted. This was not what they had expected. In the past, no one had ever dared speak to them like this. But Serena's words weren't just a challenge, they were a call for unity. It was an invitation to negotiate on her terms, the terms of respect, not subjugation. The Valorian's eyes narrowed. Ralkotha's reptilian lips curled in a smirk. "You think you can change things with words alone, girl?" he sneered. "This galaxy has been shaped by power, by force. Words mean nothing." Serena's expression softened, but her voice remained firm. Power does not have to be wielded by force. The greatest power is in choosing not to fight when there is a better way. But make no mistake, I will fight if that's the only choice left. Chapter 8: The Respect Test. In the aftermath of Serena's bold speech, the Galactic Assembly entered into a period of tense negotiation. The Valorians, their pride wounded, refused to acknowledge Serena's challenge directly, but behind closed doors, they were forced to reconsider their approach to humanity. Serena was not just a warrior, she was also a student of the world. She learned quickly that in the game of galactic politics, every word, every gesture, and every decision counted. She met with representatives from other species, some sympathetic to humanity's cause, others skeptical, and still others hostile. There were long, sleepless nights spent poring over star maps, legal documents, and cultural studies of other civilizations. Serena did not rely on diplomats or aides. She took it upon herself to understand her adversaries, to study the subtle dynamics that governed each alien race's behavior. It was a delicate dance of negotiation and subtle persuasion, a game she was not entirely prepared for, but one she learned to play. She understood that respect was not something you demanded, it was something you earned through understanding, patience, and strategy. The Valorians, however, were not so quick to admit their failure. The next trial presented itself in the form of an ancient tradition, the trial of the blade. It was an honor duel, one that would allow a champion from each side to settle matters once and for all. Serena was not the only one to take part in this trial. She had chosen someone to fight in her stead, a warrior who, unlike her, had never raised a sword against a sentient being. But this was about more than skill. It was about sending a message. A young woman named Talma, a former street fighter from Earth, had volunteered to fight in the trial of the blade. She was an unlikely candidate, unpolished, but raw and filled with untapped strength. Serena knew her well, and she knew Talma's instincts would be her greatest weapon. Chapter 9: The Duel. The trial of the blade took place in a Colosseum-like arena, with the high walls of the Valorian capital surrounding it. Talma stood, unarmored, in the center of the arena, facing her opponent, a hulking figure of a Valorian warrior. His scaled body gleamed in the sunlight, and his sword was a razor-sharp blade of alien design. Talma, in contrast, held nothing but a simple Earthian blade, a relic of her past life. The crowd jeered at her, expecting her to fall within moments. Even Serena, watching from the sidelines, was uncertain of what would come next. But as the bell rang and the duel began, Talma surprised them all. She was not the skilled fighter that the Valorians were accustomed to seeing, but she had something far more dangerous, an unyielding will to survive. She ducked, dodged, and struck with precision, her movements becoming more confident with each exchange. The Valorian warrior's arrogance was his downfall. He underestimated his opponent, letting his guard slip, and in that moment, Talma struck. The crowd gasped as her blade landed a deep cut across his arm, forcing him to retreat. The battle was far from over, but the Valorian had been humbled. Serena had known that victory would not come from sheer force alone, but from the ability to take the enemy off guard, to show them that Earth was more than they had believed. In the final moments of the duel, Talma delivered a decisive blow to the Valorian warrior's chest. The crowd fell silent as the champion of Earth stood victorious, bloodied but unbowed. Chapter 10: The Dawn of Respect. The trial of the blade marked the turning point in the galactic war of diplomacy. The Valorians, unwilling to suffer further humiliation, were forced to acknowledge that Earth had earned its place. But the true victory was in the eyes of the galaxy. Serena's influence had grown far beyond the battlefield. She had taught the galaxy what it meant to earn respect, not by subjugation, but by strength and honor. The Valorians, once the most powerful force in the galaxy, begrudgingly extended a hand of peace. They had learned that strength was not just about muscle, it was about knowing when to fight, and when to let your adversary see you as an equal. As the stars shimmered in the vastness of space, Serena D'Angelo's name became legend. The girl who had wielded a sword not to conquer, but to teach respect, had forged a new path for humanity. And with that, Earth was no longer a small, insignificant world. It was a force to be reckoned with. Chapter 11: The Council of Unity. The weeks following Talma's victory in the trial of the Blade brought unexpected alliances and deepened rivalries. Serena D'Angelo had changed the course of galactic politics. No longer was Earth viewed as a young and vulnerable species, but as a rising power in the cosmos. While many were impressed by her strength and conviction, not all were ready to accept humanity's place among the stars. The Galactic Assembly, always a hotbed of intrigue and diplomatic maneuvering, was now divided into factions. Some had accepted the humans as equals, while others, particularly the Valorians, remained hostile, albeit begrudgingly respectful. But it wasn't just the Valorians that posed a threat. The Strixari, a race of cybernetic beings from the distant edge of the galaxy, had begun to take an unhealthy interest in Earth's rising prominence. Serena stood at the head of a new Earth diplomatic mission, one that included not only military representatives but scientists, strategists, and cultural ambassadors. She had learned quickly that diplomacy was not merely the exchange of words, it was the interplay of perception, strength, and the willingness to fight when necessary. Her blade had earned her a seat at the table, but she had learned that the true weapon of diplomacy was understanding. Now, Earth was to host the most critical diplomatic event in its history, a meeting of the Galactic Assembly's most powerful members, convened to decide the future of the galaxy. Earth would present its case for inclusion in the governing body, but the road ahead was not smooth. Chapter 12: The Strixari Threat. The Strixari were unlike any species Serena had encountered. Cold, calculating, and technologically advanced, the Strixari had the ability to interface directly with machines, making them almost impossible to outsmart in a technological or intellectual battle. Their leaders, the Elders, sat high above the rest of the Strixari in a web of cybernetic constructs that kept them alive for centuries, manipulating events from the shadows. The Strixari's chief concern was power, unrestricted and absolute. They had long viewed humanity's potential with suspicion, considering Earth's propensity for violence, unpredictability, and emotion a potential threat to their rigid order. Serena had been briefed on the Strixari's growing interest in Earth. Their network of spies, hidden deep within the galactic underworld, had gathered extensive data on human technological advancements, military tactics, and the cultural resilience that made humanity so difficult to manipulate. The Strixari knew that Earth would soon become a key player in the galaxy, and they intended to control it, or crush it. The Strixari had a plan, one that involved their most dangerous weapon, the silent mind. It was a weapon designed to infiltrate the minds of weaker species, turning them into puppets, easy to control. It had been used before, with devastating effects, on lesser species that had crossed the Strixari's path. Now, the Strixari sought to use it on Earth. Serena was well aware of the Strixari's methods. They were not a species that could be confronted with force alone. In fact, the more direct a response, the more likely Earth would fall prey to the silent mind. But Serena had a different strategy in mind. Instead of hiding or trying to outmatch the Strixari at their own game, she would challenge them head-on. But first, she needed to assemble a team, one that could meet the Strixari both in the realms of intellect and strength. And that meant finding allies who could not only understand the Strixari's complex technology but also counteract their manipulative tactics. Chapter 13: A New Alliance. In the midst of this mounting crisis, Serena turned to an unlikely ally, the Kethari. The Kethari were a race of ancient, wise beings who had once served as the galaxy's keepers of knowledge. They had a history of neutrality, but recent events had shown them that neutrality was no longer possible. Their library, the largest repository of knowledge in the galaxy, contained secrets that no one had dared to unlock in millennia. The Kethari had long been rumored to possess a technology that could disrupt the silent mind, a form of psychic defense so powerful that even the Strixari could not penetrate it. Serena had always respected the Kethari for their wisdom, but she knew they were not easily swayed. To earn their trust, she would need to prove herself, not just as a warrior, but as a leader capable of uniting disparate species for the good of the galaxy. Her first step was to travel to Kethar Prime, the homeworld of the Kethari. The planet was a vast expanse of tranquil forests and towering mountains, with ancient temples nestled in the hills. There, Serena would meet with Elder Saranth, the leader of the Kedhari, and ask for their aid. When Serena arrived, she was greeted not with fanfare but with quiet observation. Elder Saranth, a being of shimmering energy and translucent skin, was unlike anything Serena had ever seen. His voice, soft and measured, was a calm contrast to the chaos she just left behind. "Human," Elder Saranth said, his eyes reflecting the stars. "You have done much to change the course of your people's future. But I sense you seek more than mere survival. You seek to change the fate of the galaxy itself. What is it that you truly want?" Serena stood tall, her sword sheathed at her side. "I want peace not just for Earth, but for every species in the galaxy. I want the Strixari to know that they cannot control us with fear, with mind manipulation, or with their technology. I want to show the galaxy that we can stand together without losing who we are." Elder Saranth regarded her with a long, thoughtful silence before responding. "It is a noble goal. But you are not yet ready to face the Strixari. Their minds are older, sharper, and more entrenched in power than you realize. They will not be swayed by diplomacy alone." Serena met his gaze, unwavering. "I know. That's why I need your help. The Strixari are a threat to everyone in this galaxy. If we do not stop them now, there will be no galaxy left to save." After a long pause, Elder Saranth spoke again. "Very well. You shall have our aid, but remember this: strength does not come from overwhelming force. It comes from unity, from understanding, from knowing when to fight and when to yield. And most importantly, it comes from within." With the Kedhari's backing secured, Serena's next task was to forge alliances with other races that had been previously neutral or even hostile toward humanity. This would not be an easy task, but Serena was more determined than ever. She knew that the Strixari's influence extended far beyond their cybernetic reach. They controlled entire star systems, and they were using their power to divide the galaxy. If she could unite the galaxy's races under a common banner, they could overthrow the Strixari's reign of fear. Chapter 14: The Silent Mind. As the days wore on, the Strixari grew bolder. They made their move by initiating the first phase of their plan, sending agents disguised as galactic diplomats into key member worlds of the Galactic Assembly, planting seeds of distrust and manipulating key individuals with their mental powers. The Silent Mind was working silently in the background, creating factions within the Assembly, turning allies into enemies, and rendering the galaxy's most powerful forces divided. Serena had no illusions about the task ahead. This wasn't just about military strength, it was about taking down the Strixari at their very core. The Silent Mind was an insidious weapon, and it had already begun to tear apart the fragile fabric of galactic unity. But Serena had a plan. She would gather a coalition of the galaxy's strongest mind psychics, intellectuals, and warriors alike and strike at the heart of the Strixari's influence. But first, she would need to confront the Strixari on their own turf, their homeworld, a place that was as technologically advanced as it was dangerous. In the final battle for the galaxy's future, Serena would face the Silent Mind head-on. She would bring together the forces of the galaxy through strength, unity, and respect, and show the Strixari that no power could stand against the will of the united peoples of the galaxy. Chapter 15: The Final Confrontation. The galaxy was on the edge of chaos. The Strixari's plan was unfolding with devastating precision. Their agents had infiltrated key systems, spreading disinformation, creating distrust, and manipulating key figures in the Galactic Assembly. The Silent Mind, their psychic weapon, had already begun to subdue the weaker-willed species, turning them into pawns in a game they couldn't even see. But Serena D'Angelo would not let the galaxy fall into darkness. She had united the most powerful species in the galaxy, including the Kedhari, the Valorians, and several other races who had once looked at humanity with disdain. Together, they formed the Coalition of Unity, a force dedicated not just to fighting the Strixari, but to preventing their insidious grip from spreading any further. The final battle would take place on the Strixari homeworld, a planet hidden in the farthest reaches of the galaxy. It was a world of cold, technological marvels, a place where the Strixari had built their power over centuries. The Coalition's forces would storm the planet, but Serena knew the real battle lay within the minds of those who had been corrupted by the Silent Mind. Serena's role was clear. She was the symbol of defiance, the one who had proven that strength wasn't just about power, it was about unity, honor, and respect. And it was her destiny to face the Silent Mind, to confront the very weapon the Strixari had used to dominate the galaxy. Chapter 16: The Heart of the Strixari. The Coalition's forces landed on Strixar Prime under the cover of darkness, the sleek ships of every race merging into one unstoppable wave. On the surface, the planet seemed quiet, almost lifeless, but Serena could feel the tension in the air. The Strixari were waiting. They knew what was coming. The final plan was set into motion. The Kedhari's psychic shields would protect the soldiers, blocking the Strixari's mental attacks as they advanced. Meanwhile, Serena, accompanied only by her most trusted warriors, would enter the heart of Strixari's citadel, the place where the Silent Mind was controlled. The citadel itself was an architectural nightmare, all cold metal and shifting forms. The Strixari, in their arrogance, believed that their technology was unbeatable. They thought that by subjugating the minds of others, they could control the galaxy. But they had underestimated humanity. Serena's team moved through the citadel with stealth and precision, cutting through the Strixari defenses one by one. They encountered little resistance, the Strixari too focused on their own power to consider the strength of unity and will. As they approached the central chamber, Serena felt the weight of the challenge ahead. The Silent Mind was waiting. The chamber was vast, its walls lined with the Strixari's machines, all feeding data into a massive central console. At the heart of it all stood a towering figure, the High Elder, the leader of the Strixari, surrounded by a web of neural interfaces and devices that seemed to pulse with a dark energy. His mind was tethered to the Silent Mind, controlling it with ease. "Welcome, human," the High Elder's voice echoed, his words not spoken but transmitted directly into Serena's mind. "You have done well to come this far. But you will not succeed. The Silent Mind will bend you to my will, as it has done with so many others." Serena's heart pounded in her chest, but she stood firm, her eyes locked on the High Elder. She had been preparing for this moment her entire life. This wasn't just a fight for survival, it was a fight for the future of the galaxy. "I don't fight to win," Serena said, her voice steady despite the pressure. "I fight because it's the right thing to do." With a swift motion, she drew her sword, the same weapon that had earned her respect in the arenas and council chambers. The energy in the room shifted. The Silent Mind, a force so powerful, tried to reach into her consciousness, to break her down. Serena felt the weight of the pressure, the thoughts trying to overwhelm her, but she held her ground. The key was simple: the Silent Mind could control those who were weak, those who let their fears or doubts take hold. But Serena was different. She had no fear of losing. She had no doubt in her heart that she was fighting for something greater than herself. And that strength became the shield against the Strixari's mental assault. "I won't be your puppet," Serena whispered, more to herself than the Strixari. In an instant, the air in the chamber crackled with energy. The Silent Mind recoiled, unable to break her will. With a single strike of her sword, Serena severed the connection between the High Elder and the Silent Mind's control center, severing the Strixari's hold over the galaxy's minds. The High Elder staggered, his body trembling as his connection to the Silent Mind collapsed. The machines surrounding him went silent. The grip of fear and manipulation that had long suffocated the galaxy loosened, and the Elder collapsed to the ground, powerless. Chapter 17: A New Era. The galaxy had been saved, but the victory was not just about defeating the Strixari. It was about proving that strength, honor, and unity could overcome even the most insidious of forces. Serena and her allies had shown the galaxy that even in the face of overwhelming odds, the power of a united people could change the course of history. In the days that followed, the Strixari's control over the galaxy quickly dissolved. The Galactic Assembly, once divided, began to come together. Humanity had earned its place as an equal among the stars not through force, but through the courage to stand up for what was right. Serena returned to Earth, her mission complete. She had not only proven humanity's worth, but she had also created a new path for the future, one where Earth was no longer the underdog but a key player in the galactic stage. And with her sword by her side, she knew that Earth would continue to stand strong, ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. The galaxy was not perfect, and there would always be those who sought to divide it. But Serena knew one thing for certain: the power of unity, respect, and strength would always be enough to overcome darkness. Epilogue: Legacy of the Blade. As the years passed, Serena D'Angelo's name became a legend, a symbol of the power of conviction, the strength of humanity, and the unbreakable will to fight for what was right. Monuments were built in her honor on Earth, but her influence stretched far beyond the boundaries of her home planet. And as new leaders arose, as new challenges emerged, the lesson she had taught the galaxy remained etched in the stars: strength is not just the weapon in your hand, but the heart behind it. And respect is earned, not through fear, but through the courage to stand firm in the face of adversity. The girl who had taught the galaxy respect with a sword had changed the universe forever.